Reach and Import your basics, Tabernacle your creatures, and Engineered Explosives your permanents. And once you get all 4 of those going, then you eventually try to win. But it's really incidental how you do it.
Yeah. But any deck that's, you know, presenting just a bunch of creatures as its game plan will really struggle with this sort of game plan.
Yeah, Kurt Spiess' deck, a full 35 lands in the deck. A little bit of a downgrade from the original 43 land, but still, huge number of lands in the deck, and you'll see it. We are underway, and Kurt, with the best turn 1 play the deck can have, it's going to be turn 1 Exploration. Exploration lets him play an additional land each turn of the game, something he will make full value of.
Yeah, especially good with Loam, but also just good for him to get out in front.
All right, so Jesse, knowing what he's playing here, both Jesse and Alex Hatfield, pretty well known in the Legacy community, innovators in the community, pretty big veterans. He's got to know what he's up against now, and knows it's going to be quite a slog for him.
Yeah, there's some off chance he's playing against a weird Enchantress build, but Kurt's opening definitely a classic land start.
All right, so we see a turn 1 Ponder by Jesse. So when you see Jesse's hand full of things like Hymn to Turok, Daze, Force of Will, how does he bring those into making them relevant in the matchup?
I mean, he's got to be fighting over Life from the Loam if Kurt finds it. That's really the only spell that Kurt plans on casting over and over again, possibly Punishing Fire as well. He needs to get on the board fast and then try to out-tempo him with these soft permission spells.
Now, he did not Force of Will the turn 1 Exploration, and that's correct. That is, you know, I would think that that'd be something he'd want to do. As you see, Kurt, his next 2 lands are both Reach and Imports. He's going to play them both and just immediately start tapping Jesse off all his mana. And Deathrite Shaman will be on the board for Jesse, so he's able to land a creature. Deathrite's actually pretty good, is able to interact with Kurt's graveyard, right?
Yeah, it's a way to suppress Loam a little bit, and Jesse's mana is going to be under attack big time this game between Rashad Port and Wasteland, potentially Tabernacle as well.
Yeah, Grove of the Burnwell was played for Kurt Spiess. He does have another land which he opted not to play this turn. He did not want to play his second Grove. His last card is Crop Rotation. So upkeep, he's going to go ahead and start by porting one of Jesse's lands. Jesse will let that one get ported. And he will port the other one. And that will work too. Jesse will just draw. He's not using the mana to use Deathrite Shaman. Presumably he wants to hit lands with the Shaman?
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay. See, a third land is a Wasteland from Hatfield. They'll pass back. See all these cards in Hatfield's hand he's been unable to use. See counter spells. Hymn to Turox has had no time to cast them. 2 more Grove of the Burnwills from Kurt and a pass back.
And Jesse pretty sharp here in waiting on using that Wasteland. If he uses it main phase, it possibly, or on his own turn rather, possibly makes a loam from Kurt a lot juicier. But he waited to make sure the coast was clear.
Yeah, so going back, Jesse will get one of his lands out from under the port. One port's gone. Kurt will still reach and import Jesse's Underground Sea. You see his hand here, Brainstorms, Tarmogoyfs, Hymn to Turox, even a Disfigure.
But Kurt really, you know, for the time being at least, spinning his tires. Until he finds Loam or until he finds lands like Maze of It that really lock Jesse out of combat, this game's actually going at a pretty reasonable pace for Jesse.
Yeah, so Jesse there was able to use Deathrite Shaman to cast a Brainstorm. He got rid of one Reach and Import from Kurt's deck. Of note, Kurt still does have a Crop Rotation, so he can find a utility land if he needs to. Among those, he does have Maze of Ith, Thespian Stage, Dark Depths, Tabernacle, Caracas, Glacial Chasm, and Wasteland as possible things for him to get. And Hymn to Turok is the card for Jesse. We'll see whether Kurt wants to rotate away a land.
I would have to assume so. I'm a little surprised to see Jesse play a Hymn here in lieu of getting the Tarmogoyf out there. Feels like he needs to start applying some pressure before Kurt's really able to get his engine going.
Yeah, the Crop Rotation is force-willed by Jesse. Presumably just force-willing it because while he still can.
Yeah.
You know, there's not going to be many spells coming out of Kurt's deck. And Wooded Foothills is the play. So right now, it actually seems like this is a fine game for Jesse, right?
Yep. You know, the land deck is really hinged on finding Loam pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, because it plays 4 Loam, it also plays 4 Gamble in the deck. That, to me at least, seems to be a pretty aggressive strategy to try to find that Loam, playing as many copies as possible.
Well, Gamble plays really well with Loam because you don't care if you end up discarding the card that you tutor for because Loam's in your graveyard and you can start dredging. we've seen Gamble in old combo decks where you were just basically crossing your fingers, hoping not to discard the critical piece. But when Loam is the card you're looking for, it makes it a lot easier to use Gamble as an enabler.
All right, so Kurt fetches there with the Windswept Heath to thin out his deck some. Gets a unhinged white bordered forest. That's, I believe, a mod.
Yes.
So those don't actually exist. And we
Will
do see,
Acetone apply to that potentially?
yeah, I know it's a long process you can go through to actually, if you so choose, you can make your black bordered cards white bordered.
Some people are fans.
All right, and Kurt's going to waste away a Underground Sea. But right now, Jesse has committed a Tarmogoyf to the board, so Jesse does have a clock down and is applying plenty of pressure. Tarmogoyf, we can count instant and land and sorcery, and that will actually be it as a 3/4. As he crashes for 3 more, Kurt goes down to 12 life.
Jesse's hand's a little weak right now, although the Wasteland could potentially provide some utility if Kurt finds something like Maze of Ith.
Yeah, and Jesse, just at what point does Deathrite Shaman hit lands or does it hit spells? You know, is he increasing his clock or is he trying to get rid of the utility of Kurt's deck?
I think because Kurt doesn't have Loam, nor does he have anything too threatening to Loam for right now, that if I was in Jesse's position, I would be focused on getting rid of spells and trying to kill Kurt as fast as possible.
Yeah, that extra damage from Deathrite, because of how it adds up, does bring Kurt down to a 3-turn clock. It's 3 from Goyf, 2 from Deathrite. As long as he doesn't get rid of all of a certain type of card in his graveyard. You know, there's an extra sorcery. That's good.
So Kurt uses Rashad Import to tap the Wasteland. Jesse doesn't want to use it there as he'd rather hold it for something like Maze of Ith, potentially Tabernacle. That gives Kurt an opportunity to Wasteland Jesse's Wasteland.
All right, and we are now on Jesse draws the card for the turn.
He drew Abrupt Decay, I believe, which is a really nice draw, as that allows him to put another spell in his own graveyard for Tarmogoyf and put an enchantment in Kurt's graveyard in the exploration.
Yep, so we see Brainstorm from Jesse finds another Abrupt Decay. There may not be too many targets for the second one, but he's Tombstalker, Disfigure, can go back on top, and now he has even a few more tools. Plays Wasteland, and he actually passes back the turn here. There was no attack.
That is curious.
Yeah,
perhaps just rush through his turn.
Yeah, that would be my guess here. I can't imagine you don't want to be attacking. And Kurt draws. He main phase ports the Wasteland again.
Trying to induce some sort of action out of Jesse.
And he's going to go ahead and shock with Brainstorm. That drops drops Kurt down to 8. And Kurt will pass the turn. So you're back on Jesse's turn. Redraws that Abrupt Decay. And all right, this time it will happen. Tarmogoyf hits Kurt down to 5 life. You see that last land in Kurt's hand is Maze of Ith. He was trying to tap the Wasteland so he could protect his own maze, but that's going to be it. Jesse Hatfield takes game 1 from Kurt Spiess.
Yeah, he was just trying to induce Jesse to use that Wasteland to open up Maze of Ith, but Jesse was having none of it, was not willing to use his Wasteland on any of those other utility lands, and so Kurt couldn't find a window to stick Maze of Ith.
Yeah, and in that situation, that looked very impressive it looked fine from Jesse's side. On Kurt's side, it looked a little anemic, like his deck didn't do anything. And you said it really is all in on that life from the Loam.
Yeah, I mean, his play in that game is just to lock Jesse out of mana with his Rashad Imports, but between Deathrite Shaman and Jesse's own Wastelands, he was able to break out.
All right, so let's move over to the sideboard. First of all, let's talk about Jesse's sideboard. What do you do against someone who's playing 35 lands?
Well, I really like bringing in his 2 copies of Nile Spellbomb, as Kurt is obviously really leaning on his graveyard through Life from the Loam to do anything of note. He has Golgari Charm, Disfigure, Spell Pierce, Nature's Claim, Frozen Grip, Diabolic Edict, a Thoughtseize, and a Creeping Tar Pit. It wouldn't surprise me. I'm sure Creeping Tar Pit is traditionally for control matchups. It wouldn't surprise me if he brought it in here just for extra mana because there's so many Wastelands and ports in Kurt's deck. I don't know if he wants to bring in the dedicated disenchant effects. There is, Exploration, Mana Bond, and Mox Diamond in Kurt's deck, but it's hard to fight over those cards because they don't need to be in play very long to generate a pretty huge effect.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's still a life from the loam deck, and every time you board in a card like Nature's Claim, you're doing yourself your normal game plan a disservice. You know, he's gaining life. You're playing a card that's not really a threat. That said, turn 1 Exploration is possibly powerful enough that you just want to disenchant it.
Yeah, and is there Mana Bond in this list as well?
2 Mana Bond for Exploration.
That facilitates some pretty explosive openings. Although again, with Mana Bonds, usually once it's in play for 1 turn, the damage is done.
Yeah. So then we'll go to Kurt's side. You know, what cards can he have in the sideboard? And it really looks like his sideboard, like you said, almost a full 15 cards to beat combo. We see 4 Sphere of Resistance. That's not for this matchup. 2 Thorn of Amethyst. 2 Dark Depths. So he already has 2 Dark Depths in the main. I don't know when he would board up to 4 Dark Depths.
To me, it probably feels like part of a package to beat combo decks when he's bringing in the Sphere of Resistance and Thorns. Because those cards are going to buy him all day. But if he has more access to Dark Depths, Thespian Stage, that combined with the taxing effects of Sphere of Resistance and Thorn of Amethyst might give him enough, might buy him enough time to win with Merit Liege.
Now, other cards in his sideboard are a Primeval Titan, a Chalice of the Void, a Bazooka Bog, 3 Corrosion Grips, and a Crop Rotation. Corrosion Grip, I imagine, for things like Counterbalance. I'm not sure any of these really come in the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Chalice of the Void set for 1 can be good while he's on the play. On the draw, that feels a little slow to me. And Jesse will have Abrupt Decays to break out of it anyway, but maybe the 1 Primeval Titan is a good secondary plan if he's playing, if he believes that Jesse will sort of sideboard out most of his removal and counter spells, but most of that sideboard, as predicted, dedicated towards trying to beat unfair decks.
And the question is if it's possible for Jesse to board out all his removal and counter spells. He has enough pieces of it that some of it may just have to stay in.
Right. It's hard to completely get away from that plan.
And remember, this match is for a spot in the top 8. As we said before, 13, actually just a full 14 players were live for top 8 entering this round. So what that means is table 1 will draw. That leaves, and that'll be 2 people in top 8, and then tables 2 through 7 all playing for a spot in the top 8. That actually includes, we had an undefeated player last round, Travis Cowley, took an intentional draw with Chris Van Meter. Is not 100% to make top 8, even on 601.
Yeah, it's very rare that we have a tournament where table 2 is not even for sure safe.
Right, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're playing Legacy. There are a lot of draws that tend to happen in Legacy, and that can really mess up with some standings math. All right, and we have a mulligan to 6 from Kurt. Looks like Jesse will be keeping. Land's one of those decks that mulligans very well.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about loam anyway, so any 6-card hand that contains loam and the mana that cast it is going to be good.
Yeah, it certainly can recoup card advantage without a second thought.
Yeah. Lands is one of those decks where if you said you have to mulligan every game, but you can start with 1 card of your choice in every opening hand. There's a lot of decks in Legacy that would say no thanks to that deal, almost all the honest ones, even a good number of the combo decks, but lands would gladly mulligan for a loam.
They might, yeah, they will have more cards very quickly. We see what Jesse's game plan is to attack the graveyard. That's what he's going to have to do to make sure he doesn't get locked out of this game. And Kurt is on 6. We will see what he does here. The question is if he can actually keep hands without loams in them. He did game 1. Looks like he does have a loam in his opener this game. So turn 1 Taiga, no exploration. Jesse's got to be happy about that. And you'll see from Hatfield, there is a Nile Spellbomb and a Delver of Secrets in his opener, along with a large number of lands and death rights.
But having a clock plus having a way to interact with Kurt's graveyard, really good opening hand for Jesse.
Yeah. Now, the danger, correct me here, is that Jesse's threats are creatures. He has Delver, Death Right. Kurt's weapon against that is going to be something like an early Tabernacle.
Mm-hmm. And there's no True Name Nemesis in Jesse's deck, too. So every maze of it that shows up is an annoying thing for Jesse to slog through. He either needs Wastelands or additional threats.
That's actually a really good point here. How does True Name, lands is a prison deck, right? In the printing of True Name Nemesis, I think the biggest blow it dealt was 2 prison decks. You see, like, decks like Death and Taxes, like lands, can they actually still be a prison deck when you have things like Nemesis running around?
I think they can. It is certainly more challenging, though.
Yeah, and we see a Mox Diamond, the draw from Kurt. He's going to play Diamond, discarding a land. And he can right now loam for his lands back. If he had that cycle land earlier, he probably would not have made that move because he can use cycle land to protect his life from the loam. Well, actually, he can still do it now, right? Yeah, he'll get both back, and if the life from the loam in the graveyard gets threatened, he will go ahead and use the cycle land to immediately dredge the loam back into his hand.
Yeah, having an instant speed way to draw a card is really critical for Kurt here.
Now, granted, Hatfield with a land will have 2 ways to target the loam. He can play Nile Spellbomb, in which case he actually will get the loam. And I think that's what Jesse will do this turn.
Yeah, remember, dredge is not a trigger. It's just a thing that happens with the card, in essence. So Kurt doesn't have to announce anything. He simply can go to his draw step and then announce dredge if Jesse doesn't respond.
Yeah. So he chose to cycle there, and that does mean that Jesse could have responded by eating the loam.
No, he just went into draw there. That cycle land's still in, the thicket's still in hand. So now you can see.
Jesse just passed the turn to Kurt.
Right.
Right. He would need another cycle land to save his loam. There is another, he loamed a loam, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
here.
a loam got flipped over.
So now there's 2 loams in the yard. That one loam is on the stack. There's no targets to it. And now the question is whether or not Jesse wants to respond. He's going to pitch Force of Will. This means that Jesse should be able to get both life from the loams out of Kurt's yard. And Kurt will play Tabernacle past the turn. And that card certainly can be problematic for the Delver deck, as it is a creature deck at the end of the day.
But even all this jockeying over, the loam and Kurt potentially losing his loams for good here, he has Dark Depths in hand, and Jesse without really any way in the way of creature removal, as you would imagine. So that plus Thespian Stage could actually end this game in short order.
Yeah, and that's one of the things which I think may have caused us, in the last year, has caused a resurgence a little bit in lands, is that previously its win con was Mishra's Factories, and now having that Thespian Stage Dark Depths interaction really has given the deck a little more power.
So this is with the Tabernacle on the stack.
Yeah, Jesse's going to upkeep sack Nile Spellbomb, targeting Kurt's library. In response, Kurt's going to attempt to cycle Tranquil Thicket. And and here's the problem, is that with the 2 loams, that Jesse can't get both of them. So Deathrite Shaman will eat one of the life from the loams, but no way to get the other one. Loam will be dredged. 3 more lands into the graveyard. And now Nile Spellbomb will get rid of the whole graveyard, and Jesse pays for his Shaman. So no one-ofs removed there. How much does it hurt Kurt to have 8 lands chopped out of his deck?
It hurts. It's going to send him back a little bit in terms of his loam development.
Yeah, in particular, he lost the cycle land, which is something which he's probably disappointed about. All right, we're back on Kurt's turn. He plays Exploration, Dark Depths, 10 counters. And that will be it. He's going to hang on to that loam for the time being. And so, yeah, probably will hang on to the loam until he finds another cycle land.
Yeah. He doesn't want to throw that into the maw of the Deathrite Shaman right now. So he's going to wait for a spot where either he's getting good value, returning back a variety of lands, or he has some way to back up, draw a card to prevent it from getting eaten by Deathrite Shaman.
And now Dark Depths is the legendary snow land out of Cold Snap. Don't worry, it's not actually, if you've been watching recently, it's not gonna pay 30 mana to make it 2020. The idea is to copy it with Thespian Stage.
Although in the hands of Ken and Haas in the Indianapolis Open, we did have a manual style Dark Depths win, so not impossible.
Not impossible. On end step there, Kurt not even removing an ice counter. And we have a draw from Kurt. It's his own Wasteland. See that one come into play. Now, Kurt's intentionally not playing this forest right now. What is the advantage he's gaining from holding it?
Potentially a buffer against Liliana plussing. Because if he goes down to just loam in hand, then the Deathrite Shaman can get it. But if he keeps a buffer, then he has a way to, keep loam in hand until he has a setup. And we see
Thespian Stage now the draw for Kurt. He does have the combo put together. And he did thaw one one ice counter off that Dark Depths. So Thespian Stage, because the land, Jesse can't respond to it coming down. Now, at instant speed, Jesse can go ahead and make a copy with Thespian Stage. Now, he can't do it at will because Jesse will wasteland the Dark Depths in response. It's a little game of cat and mouse right now.
Yeah, both players kind of have to stare at each other for a little while here because of the ability of the other to interact or disrupt at instant speed.
Yeah. Well, Kurt can force the issue. He can waste Jesse's wasteland. Then if Jesse wastes in response to the Dark Depths, then he can copy the Dark Depths and get a 20/20. And in Jesse's list, can he deal with a 20/20? You know, is there any way, you know, can he get it off the board once it's there?
He can Edict through Liliana.
All right. And that's I believe it, right?
Yeah, you can't target it with, I mean, it's indestructible. It's
Yeah.
pretty hard to remove otherwise.
Yeah, he doesn't have, there's no bounce, there's no, I suppose like Caracas, but that's not even the right colors for that. All right, and Tarmogoyf to play for Hatfield.
And now Kurt is going to go for it here.
Wastelands, Jesse's Wasteland. Jesse will Wasteland the Dark Depths. In response, he will Thespian Stage the Dark Depths, and that'll be it.
There you go. Jesse was able to cut him off of Loam for the most part there, but Kurt just naturally drew Dark Depths and Thespian Stage, and that's all it took.
Yeah, he does play possibly post-board up to 4 of each. And this is where lands has gotten stronger. In the past, lands really did have to be like establish a lock. I think, you know, when you only had Mishra's factories to win, you couldn't really win quickly, so you really had to be a control deck. The printing of Deathrite Shaman made that harder because lands uses the graveyard so much, but now it does, you know, it actually has a clock. As you saw there, his Loam development was pretty much kept in check, but then he made a 20/20.
Yeah, and it's also valuable in terms of how much time, physical time, it takes to conclude your rounds. Lands drew a lot. You know, and against creature decks, it often had to, as you said, because it was killing with Mishra's Factory, basically entirely lock the other deck out of the game through Wasteland, Port, Tabernacle before it could really start applying any pressure. Now you have a combo kill. It accelerates both in terms of turns total in the game and how much time it takes.
Yeah, so see players going on to game 3, and the troubling thing to me, if I'm Jesse Hatfield about that game, is that seemed like a pretty good hand that Jesse could have had. He had a Nile Spellbomb, a pair of Deathrite Shamans, a Delver of Secrets, a lot of his weapons.
He had a lot of ways to interact with the graveyard and a clock.
Yeah, he had a clock interaction, and it still was not enough.
And Kurt mulliganed. I mean, you know.
Right.
Jesse can't ask for too much more out of a hand there. And it really shows the importance of having Loam. Even though Kurt really didn't go off with Loam in that game, the threat of it contracted Jesse's development so much that he was able to generate a pretty substantial edge.
Yeah, Jesse had to spend the entire game positioning around that life from Loam, and because he did, he never really had time to start working on Kurt's life total.
Deathrite was in a holding pattern for a lot of the game, trying to protect against Loam coming back, and you know, it was a mess from Jesse's side, even as good as his hand was in the abstract.
Yeah.
Game 3 about to get underway here. One of these players trying to lock up a top 8 berth. Again, unable to draw as we have a lot of X and 1s going all the way down to 13th place, I believe, going into the round.
Yeah, and even there's an X11 at 14th who should still be live for top 8.
Yeah.
Because thanks to having great breakers, he was X01 last round and picked up his first loss. So
sure,
picking up his wins and losses in the right order still make top 8.
So potentially 14 players live.
Right.
For 8 slots.
Yeah, 2 of them drawing, the remaining 12 all playing. And I did last round able to walk through some of the decks that we actually have at our top tables. We have a good smattering of different archetypes here. We can run down a few of them. You know, Reanimator's the one that we have in top 8.
Yeah, Chris Van Meter, he was wandering by earlier, intentionally drew. He's locked up a top 8th berth. Travis Cowley with Death and Taxes. Further down the list, you see Bug Delver that we have on camera. Epic Storm Lands, Stoneblade, Elves, a Bug Delver deck, a Rug Delver deck, Deathblade, and our XO and 1 who just lost, Romano Neto playing Mud.
Yeah,
so
that's
potentially
super
very
exciting.
Between decks like Mud and Lands, we could have a very capital L legacy top 8 potentially.
Yeah. NATO playing Rudy Brixa actually for that last spot in one of our off-camera features. So we've seen Rudy on camera a couple times here battling the last rounds. He's has an interesting challenge in his last match.
Yeah, it's really great to see both the turnout for this event. 460 is huge for a Legacy Open. And then also on camera, we've had a lot of kind of the weirder decks of Legacy. We have lands on camera now. We had Dredge on camera a little while ago. We've seen a lot of combo. It's not been the Esper Blade versus Blue, White, Red Delver metagame that we see in less developed Legacy areas. Baltimore definitely has a robust scene.
Yeah, then that's not to say that Delver wasn't there. We did have some players. Ben Friedman was playing Blue, White, Red Delver all the way in contention and up until picking up a second loss last round. You know, we do still have some Delver decks here. We still have a Stone Blade in contention. We still have a Death Blade in contention. But then we have all these, yeah, you're absolutely right, all these other decks, you know, a seasoned lands pilot here. You know, I'd say most Legacy communities have 0 to 1 player who can play lands at a high competitive level.
Both players going down to 6.
Yeah, once again, something that I would imagine that favors Kurt.
Yeah.
He's one of the best mulliganing decks in the format, I think.
It doesn't really care about cards in a conventional way.
Right. The deck is so much, it's really operating on a different axis. And that's how you can get such good matchups and bad matchups at the same time.
Jesse picking up 6 here.
Yeah, and we see a pretty good one for Kurt. He has a exploration and a gamble in the opener. It's got to be pretty happy about that.
Yep. Puts a lot of pressure on Jesse to have a way to interact with the graveyard, or else Kurt can go crazy pretty fast.
Yeah, well, what Jesse does is he has a turn 1 Delver with Force of Will and Spell Pierce backup. And he's going to go ahead and start out with Delver of Secrets. He's going to have to be on an aggressive game plan than this game. You know, hopefully counter a couple key spells. And we see Windswept Heath is going to fetch for Kurt. He does have 2 explorations and a gamble. We'll see if Jesse pulls the trigger on countering an exploration. It's the gamble that he needs to get.
I had to imagine that Jesse's going to counter about the first spell that Kurt allows him to counter here.
All right, and it's going to be exploration. We'll see if he goes for that one. It would require him to cast Force Pitching something. Yep, he's going to go ahead and Force Pitching Brainstorm.
The thing is, you don't know if that's the only spell Kurt has in his whole hand. You know,
right.
So you got to cash in the counters when the getting's good.
Yeah, not to mention you have Spell Pierce in your hand, and if you let Exploration resolve, you're basically discarding the Spell Pierce.
Yeah.
You know, Kurt will have 4 lands on turn 2. Spell Pierce will not be an issue. And Wasteland on Taiga. Jesse swings for 1. And Kurt do a second gamble there. And he's going to try for another exploration, and that will get pierced. So Kurt's development will be slow here. He will be able to gamble for whatever he needs there. I think the danger is that he might gamble for Punishing Fire.
Possibly, yeah. That seems like a pretty good spot here
Yeah.
against this Insectile Aberration. He doesn't really have anything in his graveyard to overpower this Insectile Aberration. There's no Mazaveth, there's no Tabernacle, and so in the short term, he has to be concerned with how much damage he's taking.
Yeah, he can, thanks to, he plays Tranquil Thicket into play tapped. Both his lands are both Tranquil Thickets. Usually the Landsfire doesn't, when he has the option, he tries not to have Tranquil Thicket actually be put into play. But he's going to go ahead and gamble here. So remember, gamble is a tutor where he finds a card and then he discards a card at random.
Still choosing to get Loam here.
Yeah, you call it gamble because sometimes you discard the card you searched for. It's the red tutor, I believe. You know, you had a cycle of tutors with Vampiric, Enlightened, Mystical. This was generally considered the red tutor in the cycle.
Yeah, this came
random tutor.
This came a little bit later, as those tutors all appeared in Mirage or Visions, and Gamble enters a Saga rare.
And Insectile Aberration continues to hit down Kurt. He's down to 12, and a second Delver hits the board for Jesse. And he draws for the turn. He has the Loam now, and I would think he needs to get Punishing Fires.
If not now, then within 1 turn.
Yeah. The question is, he can either Loam and then gamble getting Punishing Fire, or he can gamble immediately, see if he gets see if he's lucky enough to get Punishing Fire. don't know if he has a red source, but if he does, then he could cast it immediately.
Yeah, he has a Taiga in the graveyard and a Windswept Heath in the graveyard, but no way in hand.
Yeah, he also has the option to crop rotate for a Tabernacle here.
Well, that's a little bit slow. Jesse doesn't need to use his lands for anything else at this point.
Right, that's his end game basically. Yeah. So Thespian Stage is the land for the turn. From Kurt, he's going to gamble main phase. Looks like.
I think he might be gambling for Maze of Ith, or he's going to get Dark Depths and try to set it up.
All right, so he's gonna instead just try to 20-20 here.
And keep in mind, if he loses the depths, he still has a loam to get it back.
Yep, so it's random, but it's rigged. Eventually it finds its way to his hand. And the discard that's gotta be probably the best one, Tranquil Thicket. It doesn't really matter, as long as it's the land, he's gonna loam them all. So he gets the Thicket, he gets the Taiga, he gets the Windswept Heath. And there's so many interesting lines there. We saw, like I said, the whole time I was thinking he was going to get Punishing Fire, but much more aggressively, he's just going to go ahead and make the 20-20. And it certainly shows, he's right about this, for example. He's seasoned at the deck. Even when you only have, 25 spells in the deck, there's still a lot of lines to play to.
Yeah. I thought he might be trying to go and set up Maze of Ith plus Thespian Stage to buy himself a lot of time. This route is much better, as if Jesse has no specific answer, then Kurt can just make Merit Legion win that way.
Yeah, he doesn't have the crop rotation anymore.
Although somewhat importantly, Jesse can actually survive one hit from Merit Legion as he's up to 21 from Grove of the Burn Willows triggers.
Yeah.
That does influence the race.
Some reprieve for Kurt there. Jesse was not able to flip his Delver. Had he flipped his Delver, Kurt started the turn at 12. It would have taken a turn off Kurt's clock, but now it is a 2-turn clock staring down Kurt's Spiess. And if you're Jesse, do you know? And Wasteland hits Grove.
What a draw.
That is huge here. Tranquil Thicket, the draw for Spiess, but he is in a bind. He drew there, as to note, instead of dredging loam. Presumably he is searching for, maybe no, he actually isn't playing Engineered Explosives. I'm going to stand corrected. Normally I'd say they play an Engineered Explosives Academy Ruins interaction, but Kurt not doing that today. Maybe he could naturally draw Punishing Fire. That would be
Yeah, that'd be very good here. Maze of Ith's still a very good draw as well.
Yep, he went ahead and cycled, see if he could hit Punishing Fire. He did not. And Jesse swings Kurt down to 4. Kurt has been very fortunate. If that was a flipped Delver, Merit Lage would not save him this turn, as both the Delvers would be 3s. But as a result, Kurt being at 4 can take another Delver hit. So he makes Merit Lage here. He will go to 1 and not 0. And Kurt may have secured a victory there, very narrowly.
He's not out. He's not out of the woods yet, even in that scenario. Remember, he's not in one-shot kill land with this Merit Lage, as Jesse's on 21.
Yeah. Ponder finally flips the second Delver for Jesse, a turn later than he would have liked. And before Jesse even gets a chance to draw the Ponder, Kurt's going to go ahead and make Merit Lage. You'll see he's going to go with the classic. Is it the Jerry token? No, it's the classic Merit Lage token.
You got to let him play with the classic.
If you're gonna make a 20-20, I will give you the option to choose what 20-20 you would like to make.
See a Ponder here.
All right,
and so Jesse looking at an Abrupt Decay.
Yeah.
Here's a black spell on the land.
So he doesn't have an answer to the Merit Lage yet, which means he'll have to leave his Delvers back. I think his game plan is to leave his Delvers back to block, until he gets a third creature, and then alpha. That's the straightforward thing he's trying to find.
Yeah. He doesn't need that much pressure. He just needs one additional creature.
Yeah, 1 point of damage, or a Deathrite Shaman even, if he can find that. That's a lot of pressure, because then he can swing 3 and drain 2.
Yeah, but Kurt's got some huge draws here. Again, Maze of Ith and Punishing Fire are the big ones. Because if he's able to whittle down Jesse's board here, he has a lot of time to find something to sweep up the remains and win the game.
All right, but that will be Tombstalker. That will put a lot of pressure on Kurt. And
that fetch land there from Jesse means, again, that he's in one-shot territory.
Yeah. So I believe what Kurt can do here is if he dredges the life from the loam and hits the Punishing Fire, he can play the Grove in his hand, get back the Punishing Fire, kill a Delver, and be okay for next turn. Outside of that, I mean, we'll see what tricks he can come up with. I would say, I am very hesitant to say that's all he can find. He has shown us beforehand that there are a lot of resources in this land stack.
Yeah.
Well, he's going to start by dredging loam. And he hits Mox Diamond, life from the loam. There's not a Punishing Fire in there. And I don't see a way that he can survive it. But
yeah, none of the lands in hand provide any utility.
I think he's just double checking here. He's going to go ahead and cast. We'll see. He's looking between Thespian Stage and Grove of the Burn Willows. It's going to be Stage, and he passes the turn.
I mean, he may want to just be
Will this
bluffing
be it?
Punishing.
Yeah.
Maybe just be bluffing Punishing Fire, because if he has it here, Jesse actually has to Alpha Strike to finish the game off here. So
Right. Well, he didn't have it last turn, and he didn't draw a card this turn. He drew life from the loam. So if I'm Jesse, I'm not going to buy the bluff.
there's a lot of evidence to support that it's not there, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not sure on Jesse's side. You know, you have to be
Jesse
cautious.
dies on the way back if he alphas, so there's a lot riding on this decision.
Yeah, it's that's a very good point. If he goes for it and it's there, he loses.
A lot of, I mean, we have the benefit of seeing hands, and we've seen the whole game play out, but you can see it on Jesse's face right now. It's hard to understate the magnitude of these decisions when you're sitting there in the chair. Even if it feels fairly obvious and straightforward, you're never as confident as you seem, and you see Jesse just passes the turn.
Wow, and well, masterfully played by Kurt here. He's gonna go ahead and copy the Taiga. And Dredge Loam finds Gamble. Grove.
There's Punishing Fire.
Wow, and he gets it in the graveyard. I am... that is all right. Well played. Well played, Kurt. And now the bluff is no longer a bluff, as there's a Grove peacefully sitting in Kurt's hand. He still can't attack yet because Tombstalker is lethal on its own.
Yeah.
So, Jesse can jump with an Insectile Aberration. Kurt can Punishing Fire an Insectile, you die to the Tombstalker, but he can go to work. He can
start doing some serious damage on Jesse's board. And remember, because Jesse went from 21 to 20, if he's able to knock Jesse down to having only one creature in play, he can then force chump blocks.
Well, he can, except the way he knocks it down, Jesse will gain 2 life.
This is true.
So then, yeah, that one point where he first activates the Punishing Fire takes that away. If he gets enough lands, he can eventually start like Thespian Staging, Groves, and Punishing Fire Jesse to the face.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems safe because like the only way Jesse can sneak across that last damage is with a lot of creatures. He's only drawing 1 card a turn, and with Deathrite Shaman, which Kurt could Punishing Fire. But Kurt elects to swing Merit Lage.
And he's doing this because he represents lethal, and he can just make a new Merit Lage to sit back on defense.
Exactly. So he plays Thespian Stage there. And he can sit back on defense with another Merit Lage. Now, if Jesse draws Wasteland, he's good here, right?
He's doing this.
Yeah,
he's doing inside up.
Right, and that's so that Wasteland doesn't get him.
Right.
All right, Wasteland, Dark Depths, and makes Merit Lage.
Kurt's demonstrating a lot of angles with this deck.
Yeah, this is really neat. He drew Glacial Chasm for the turn. I don't think he has enough. He can't really. Yeah, he doesn't have enough lands in play yet. He needs to just play lands. He plays Grove of the Burn Willows there. He's going to go ahead and Grove. Jesse goes up to 21. He's getting back Punishing Fire. And he's going to go ahead and punish the Delver of Secrets, or the Insectile Aberration as it is. That will go to the graveyard. But thanks to that Grove of the Burn Willows, this Merit Lage is no longer lethal. Kurt will just have to pass the turn back.
Yep. But he's sitting in a much better spot now. Now he's really threatening Jesse. I mean, he's in a position now where he can potentially burn out Jesse next turn. He's compelled to block with the Tombstalker because he could
return
it's
Grove,
net
go to
1
the face.
damage to return Punishing Fire.
Yeah, absolutely. And he just continues to draw cards. You see 2 Loams in his hand, another Grove of the Burn Willows. Yep, Merit Lage swings, and Tombstalker does have to block. And a close game, but it looks that Kurt has turned the corner. Jesse is out of creatures. Kurt main phase returns the Punishing Fire to avoid graveyard hate. He's going to Punishing Fire it again. Jesse's down to 20. And plays Glacial Chasm.
And Kurt looked dead to rights in this game.
Yeah, I completely
Just dead to rights.
agree. And the draw, no
Wow.
help there. Kurt Spiess goes on to the top 8, defeating Jesse Hatfield 2-1.
That was
a demonstration right there.
That was
You can see it on his face.
Kurt looks tapped. That was unbelievable
I wonder if he's
magic
gonna-
from Kurt Spiess.
Yeah, I wonder if he's going to tell me, he's like, oh.